She fell in love with him and married him, only to later find out that he was an accomplished scam artist who was out to destroy her financially and emotionally. Lee Mackenzie is the author of Charming Predator, a memoir of her life with Kenner Jones, a man once described by a seasoned U.S. immigration officer as the best con man he had ever encountered. Lee, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Did you know him as Kenner Jones, or did he use some other alias when he was with you?
I knew him as Kenner Jones. I met him when I was backpacking, as we often do in our youth, go looking for our roots, our cultural roots. And I have a lot of heritage in Wales. So I was traveling through Wales. He was working in a tourist office. He introduced himself as Kenner Elias Jones. And I went eventually and stayed with him and his mother for a week. And his mother was Primrose Elias Jones. And that's the man I met. He was just a gentle, ordinary person. I had no hints.
Not only did you fall in love with him, but as I understand it, all your friends and family thought he was a great guy as well.
That's one of the magic things that a con artist or someone who is an imposter in your life in any way, someone who's a very accomplished imposter, is able to persuade everyone that they are wonderful, intelligent, kind, non threatening in any way. My family and my parents thought he was the best thing to come down the road in a long, long time. And as I've found, and as anyone who reads the book will find, I'm not alone. This is a more common story than I ever imagined.
Yeah, and I want to get to more about that in just a minute, but first, what was his story to you? Who did you believe him to be? What did he tell you about his life?
He was someone who grew up in a small town in North Wales. He had an interest in politics. He was a very intelligent person who could discourse on many subjects. And when I met him, he said that he had been working in politics in the UK for a while, needed to take a little break from that intense atmosphere and all that kind of very cerebral work, and just took a job for the summer as a tourist agent in North Wales. For it was relaxing, it was fun. He would meet people, just take a break from his more difficult life, and then go back to it later. I had no reason to disbelieve him, especially when his mother also supported that that was the truth.
And how much of that was true, if any of it?
Small fragments of it. This again is part of the gift of someone like Kenner Elias Jones. They can take a small sample of what is the truth and weave things around it so that whatever they're offering you does have a ring of truth. And then your job, if you accept it, is to try to discern if they're telling you the truth or not. Well, in the late 70s, early 80s, you couldn't just Google somebody and see if their background was what they were claiming. You pretty much had to look them in the face, look them in the eye, and decide for yourself if you believed them. But a con is very good at not displaying conscience. So all of the things that you look for, if you were lying to me, Sharon, you'd give it away somehow. Your eyes, your body language, something would alert me. But a con doesn't give those signals off, and so you trust them.
So how did his story start to unravel?
As a young woman with no experience of anyone like this in my life, I grew up in a rural community on Vancouver Island on the west coast of Canada. We didn't lock our doors. Everyone sealed a deal with a handshake. It was a very innocent way to grow up. So didn't grow up being a suspicious, skeptical person. If you told me who you were, I believed you. So this is the young woman who met this man and also carried with her not only this trusting nature and history of growing up in a place that was trusting, but who had dreams, all the lovely dreams that the storybooks and the movies and life offers you about love and fidelity and dreams coming true. So here on one hand, I had my wish for dreams coming true. On the other hand, I was this non-skeptical, innocent, non-worldly person. Oh, I was ripe for the picking.
So you've said looking back now, there were some warning signs, but I imagine in any relationship there are things that come up that seem to be discrepancies that actually have a perfectly rational explanation, yes?
It's interesting that as I look back, I see not only the giant role that I played in my own demise, but how everything in this story with him, in my experience of him, crept in on little cat feet. The crumbling of his stories, the web of lies starting to be visible, were all small things. We like to think that there would be one giant crash where everything was suddenly revealed, but it wasn't. There were small little samples of it all the way down the road. And because of that, it was easier to deny them as they came along until the entire thing just was a load that was too heavy.
Were you his only victim?
Not by a long shot. As I found in later times, he had been in and out of jail at least 6 times, prison, I should say, not jail. He'd been in and out of prison at least 6 times before I encountered him, and many times after. He has perpetrated his trade around the world, Europe, Kenya, the United States, Canada. He is permanently barred from Canada and permanently barred from the United States.
So where is he now?
That's an excellent question, and I'd love to know because I'd like to write a final chapter to the book of meeting him one more time. I have personal belongings of his that aren't mine to destroy, things like the family photographs, that sort of thing. We last had a trace of him in Sweden, where he was trying to declare refugee status, claiming that he was a Kenyan national being pursued by the Kenyan government for uncovering corruption, or who knows. He has left a trail of debris through Europe. I also had someone contact me on my website because I invite people to try and help me find him. I had someone contact me and say that they saw him in London and that they know it's him because they were in prison with him in the UK. So the trail is difficult because he is extremely skillful at reinventing himself and hiding himself in a number of aliases.
So as you know, I'm working on a story that has some parallels to yours. It's about a young woman here in Maine named Catherine Lacasse, who was engaged to a man who just 2 weeks before their wedding date was caught having sex with one of his 14-year-old gymnastics students. Certainly his deception wasn't quite as elaborate as Kenner Jones was with you, and you don't know the two people personally in this story, but I did want to ask you, just generally speaking, about her situation and others like it. Catherine talks a lot about beating herself up, and with her background in psychology, feeling like maybe she should have known something was wrong, and other people might ask, how could she not have known? What would you have to say about that?
Oh, her story is my story. First of all, I was a journalist. She's worked in psychology. Oh, yes, we should be smart enough to see through all this. The part of this that people don't understand is that if a con artist is that good, they know not only how not to give off the tells, the little hints that will let you know that they're lying, that they're conning, that they're manipulating you, but they also are very skillful at identifying in you the things that you need and want to hear. And so Kenner, for example, was excellent at zeroing in on my longing for security, a stable family, love, uh, adventure in a new country, the ability to live in a new culture and understand that adventure and learn. He also understood that I tried to see myself as a kind and compassionate person. And so he would play those cards. Well, you must believe me. After all, you're a kind and compassionate person. He would identify those sorts of things. But also, he was very, very good at making sure that whatever he was offering had that tiny grain of truth in it so that you couldn't tell if he was lying or if he was telling you the truth. And offered that choice, how do you default? You tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, Catherine's story rings so true for me, but also the part about beating yourself up is huge. Here we're young people without uh, decades of experience in this. Oh, it's very easy for me now in my 60s to look back with some clarity. But in those days, I didn't know where to put my feet. I was trying to make up my strategy as I went along, find my choices as I went along. And as soon as there was problems and the entire castle crashed to the ground, I was the first person I blamed. Why didn't I see this? Oh, yes, I can look back at the trail of breadcrumbs and it's clear. But at the time, when it's a crumb at a time, it's easy to push it aside, go, you know what? Maybe I'm making this up. Maybe I'm looking for things that aren't there. A person who loves you would never do this to you. I must be misunderstanding what's going on. It's a slippery slope and very tempting.
Lee Mackenzie, again, the name of the book is Charming Predator. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you get to write that last chapter someday.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and I wish you and Catherine the very best.